Ain Faber was born on December 15, 1991 in the Netherlands. As a child, she was described as a brave, stubborn girl who loved to make friends. Her father, Wim, said that she was a very intelligent and enterprising girl, and that she was a curious and interested student who did extra school work simply because she found it interesting, even if it didn't get any grades. According to her mother, at just 4 years old, she already knew all her classmates by name and was friends with almost all of them. She was the first child of Wim Faber and Els van Heeswijk, who 4 years later had another child, a boy named Rogier. When Ain was just 1 year old, her family moved to Elst, a village near the city of Arnhem, in the Netherlands where they still live. After finishing high school, Ain was awarded a scholarship to a university in the city of Amsterdam and rejected to pursue a career in business administration. She moved to the city of Utrecht, a large Dutch city, where she was hired by an arts company. One of her roommates in town says she was someone you could talk to all night, being very communicative and friendly. In the company, Ain dedicated herself a lot and gave her all. With that, she was quickly promoted to director. Her biggest dream was over time to have the ability to build her own business, a large company focused on the art business that would be able to introduce new artists and give them the resources they needed to succeed in their careers. To get away from her professional routine, Ain used to cycle to escape the hustle and breathe some fresh air. On September 29, 2017, she set up a passing route in which she would visit places like Leegversh, Barn, and Soest, and then Daldr, most of them villages with large green areas and dirt tracks. Her first stop on the route was in Soest, a small town famous for its forests and also widely used as a training camp for the Dutch armed forces. Afterwards, she also stopped in Den Daldr, a small village with several shops, restaurants, and eateries. She swung around the place and then continued on through the village of Barn, where a heavy rain began to fall, causing her to seek a temporary shelter. It was 6:50 p.m. when Ain took advantage of the new stop to take a selfie and send it to her boyfriend. That was her last message, just before she disappeared altogether. When she didn't return home, her parents became desperate and asked family and friends for help to search for her. Even before contacting the police, they organized a search that lasted 12 days, between September 30 and October 12. After being unsuccessful in the first 2 days, the disappearance was reported to the police, who joined in the search. A large police mobilization was carried out, with about 55 field soldiers searching all possible places where the young woman could be. Several strategies and routes were devised by both officers and civilians who participated. On October 3rd, in the midst of the search, the coat that Ain wore when she was cycling was found. 2 days later, they also found her bicycle, and on October 6th, her backpack. The items found were all sent to the police forensics and to obtain clues. On October 8, the Netherlands Forensic Institute determined that the young woman's coat contained DNA material that matched the profile of a man named Michael Penhuis. But who is Michael Penhuis? Michael Penhuis was born in 1988 and was 29 years old at the time of the events. He was from the city of Zeewald, a city with just over 20,000 inhabitants, also in the Netherlands. His DNA was in the police database because he had been convicted before, the first time in 2011, for forcing intimate relations with 2 girls in May 2010. In addition to 5 extortions, attempted robbery with violence, and illegal possession of weapons. He was still serving part of his sentence in a psychiatric clinic when he became a suspect in the crime against Ain. On October 9, 2017, with DNA results in hand, police arrested Michael on charges of involvement in Ain's disappearance. With the arrest, it was expected that progress would be made on the case, as nothing other than personal items had been found, even after several days of searching. Investigators interrogated the man for an entire day, but he wouldn't say anything. Later, on October 11th, after being pressured by the police, he confessed to taking Ain's life. After the confession, Michael guided the officers to Ain's body, 2 weeks after her disappearance. She was buried in Oosterwold, a Dutch nature reserve. The body was recovered and sent for forensic examination, which confirmed its identity. According to forensic analysis, the attacker was extremely violent during the crime. Ain had several serious injuries and several bruises on her body that were caused while she was still alive, in addition to signs of sexual violence. After recovering the body, the police sought to understand how the crime had happened. In his testimony, Michael reported that on the day of the incident, he told the psychiatric clinic that he needed to restore his scooter and was granted permission to go outside. He was driving the scooter on the same trail as Ain when it ended up colliding with her bike. Ain then would have gotten angry and threatened to call the police, which made him despair, since his vehicle was not up to date with the documents. He thus decided to take her cell phone, breaking it in sequence, and then forcing her to enter a forest path, where he took advantage of her in various ways. While they were still in the woods, Ain would have noticed a cyclist passing through the area and quickly screamed for help, while Michael would have gotten angry and decided to silence her, taking her life. He later says he took the young woman's body back to the trail and tied it to the back of his scooter, going further afield where he buried it, initially under some leaves, until he dug a shallow grave in the sand to bury it permanently. On his way back, he said he had scattered the victim's belongings in various parts of the region, leaving them hidden among the foliage. The next day, Michael claims to have changed his mind and decided to bury Ain's body in a more inaccessible location. He then borrowed his mother's car, drove the township to Zeewold, his hometown, and dug a medium-sized grave deep in the forest. Then he returned to the place where the body was, dug it up and took it to the grave. There, he cleaned the body with chlorine and then reburied it. In the end, he washed the whole car and went home. A complete reenactment was made of the crime, starting with the moment when Michael left the clinic to gas up his motorcycle. It was proven that he carried out with him a knife, screwdrivers, pilers, and a screw. His lawyers claimed these items were supposed to be sold in the city, but the prosecution believes they were chosen with the man's prior intent to commit a crime. The police made further searches but were unable to recover the phone and some accessories that Ain was wearing on the day of the crime. When questioned, Michael said he didn't know what happened to these items. The case generated great popular uprising due to the fact that Michael was convicted of violent crimes and walked freely on the streets. At the time of the crime, he was still serving the end of his sentence in a psychiatric institution, but was allowed to leave frequently and unsupervised. Michael had been transferred from the prison to the clinic where he was undergoing treatment. There, according to reports, he had a lot of freedom and circulated without any accompaniment outside the institution. Furthermore, no assessment of his mental health status and the risks he possibly posed to society were measured inside. The protesters pointed out that the criminal lived almost like a free man inside the clinic. In theory, convicted felons like Michael are required to receive constant supervision when they are in a public area in the Netherlands. However, as Michael had the right not to review his crimes to the clinic, he ended up taking advantage of this loophole to omit his violent crimes. The fact made people point out a possible flaw in the country's legal system. On June 11, 2018, the trial of Michael Penhuis began and took 2 days to conclude. The prosecution said it was unwilling to ask for a life sentence for the accused, for fear that it would end up getting him parole and getting out of prison after 25 years without undergoing any treatment. Prosecutors also strove to convince the jury that the crime had been premeditated rather than random occurrence by someone walking down the street. They pointed out the fact that the man had previously been convicted of crimes of the same nature and that the punishment received earlier had not been sufficient to stop him. Michael's lawyers, on the other hand, argued that he had acted purely out of impulse and desperation. In his report, the man stated that he only decided to commit the crime after the victim shouted for help to the cyclist who was passing through the region. According to the criminal, his intention was to release her after committing the crime. However, after the screams, the two got into a physical fight, and to keep her silent, Michael took Ain's life. The man also claimed to be beside himself at the time of the crime. He said he was on about 15 Ritalin pills, which he used daily. After jury deliberation, the Utrecht court released the sentence of Michael Penhus. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the crime against Ain Faber. The penalty was the same as requested by prosecution. He was also forced to pay over 137,000 euros to Ain's parents and brother for the crime. The court, however, considered that the fact had not been premeditated, since there was no way to prove that the man planned it in advance. In that same trial, Michael was also convicted of assaulting 2 security officers and 3 staff at the psychiatric clinic where he was being held while awaiting trial. According to reports, he would have punched and beaten these people in a moment of revolt. Psychological analysis of the accused revealed that he suffered from a personality disorder with antisocial characteristics. The man was also dependent on alcohol, Ritalin, and other narcotics. The crime against Ain resonated throughout the Dutch press and also in several other countries, both for its brutality and for the failures that allowed it to occur. Ain's family protested the case and asked that Michael be sentenced to life in prison, even though the prosecution decided not to apply for that sentence. They argued that someone with such a violent background couldn't have been released so easily. Her parents also regretted saying that the crime was completely preventable, since it was enough for the man to be forced to tell his entire story, for him to have been prevented from circulating that day, which would have kept their daughter alive. Her mother said she misses her every day, while her brother Rogier said he missed his sister's hugs. Ain Faber, Ain's uncle, published a book in 2019 titled Ain Chronicle of a Quest, with an afterword written by the young woman's father. In the afterword he wrote, "My sweet beautiful daughter is gone from my life forever. The life before me is stripped of all lightness, brightness, and desire to grow old. I will never see her again run around with her dazzling smile, witness her wedding, see her children grow up. All I really want is for her to come back and sit next to me on the couch and put her feet in my lap." Well guys, that's it for today. Thank you for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.